I want to share a little bit of the technology, and mostly the technology of using video and writing as a healing tool in PTSD, in trauma, in mental emotional disease. First thing to understand is that because we are a social species, shame and dissociation is inherently traumatic. Doesn't matter if it's your family, your community, your neighbors. When people give you the message, you're not welcome here, we don't like you, we don't accept you, we don't want you, go away. This is traumatic. It produces shame, first of all. Shame is simply the emotion we feel when we know that a good percentage or some people around us disrespect, dislike, don't want us. We feel shame. It's the experience of rejection. It has very little to do with innate values. For example, in Zimbabwe or some African place, a young woman might feel shame that her genitals were not mutilated. So it's why? Because everyone around her has decided that this is ugly. Now, it doesn't matter that it's actually beautiful to the rest of the world, because she doesn't have connection with the rest of the world. What matters is that as she looks around in the eyes around her, those eyes are telling her, you are ugly. You're not one of us. You are flawed. We don't welcome and accept you. This triggers shame. And I use the extreme example because I want you to understand that shame is amoral. That means it's neither moral or not moral. It is cultural. We feel shame when the majority or when people we trust and respect look at us as unwanted, ugly beings. And we identify with what is looked at. We feel angry and indignant if, like, no, I didn't steal that thing. Don't look at me like a thief. I'm not that. But if we did steal it, if we did do whatever it was, that is taboo. In that circle, we feel shame. Shame is traumatic. So this is just a little bit of context. And the reason it's traumatic is that as a social species, despite all the individualism BS, that we're sold in the media and all that as modern Westerners, we have never been more interconnected. We're so interconnected that a hacker in the Ukraine can disconnect the medical support for our mother in a local hospital, and we don't know who did it, why, whatever. We're vulnerable and we are dependent on one another for survival. Our bodies know this, even as our minds, do their daily aspiration to being, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, I don't care what anyone feels about me, I'm independent, BS. Our brain knows that we need one another. We don't just need one another, we need the goodwill and blessing of one another to feel safe, and that we can meet a basic need to belong. And to do that, we also know we have to do. If you're in a genital mutilization circle, you're not going to feel like you belong until you've hacked away at your body. Now, the same is true of emotion and all of that. If you are an American man, you're not going to feel accepted as an American man until you've hacked away at your tears, until you've hacked away at your caring, until you've hacked away at the desperation of your need to love and be loved, to connect and to bond, you will not be accepted. And it is just as brutal, just as barbaric, just as inane to hack away at your heart as it is to hack away at your genitals. Frankly, I'd rather be a man who can fully be myself, mentally and emotionally, and mostly physical, and lose some small part of my anatomy, than I would have my heart and my mind ravaged with so much shame and judgments and controls that it's very hard to be and bring myself into this world without getting whacked constantly, often anonymously and often silently. You just feel all the judgment. So this is a little bit of context. In this context, we get sick because the culture is not aligned with ourselves and with our well-being in important areas. We are not fundamentally materialist. We're not fundamentally efficient producers of objects. We are fundamentally thinking, feeling, whole spiritual beings present in this body. And to the degree that we have that denied, and that we deny it ourselves in order to fit in with what is, I've mentioned it before, but in the 100 million years, and in particularly the last 10,000 years, with more than 10,000 languages and 10,000 cultures, we are a distinct new arrival of a species that denies the existence of our spirit, of God, of goddess, of anything bigger than us, anything that isn't material. We are a very, very, very fragile minority, much less than 1%, with the hubris, like every other culture in the last 10,000 years, to believe that we know best and that this time we really are right. Science is a wonderful thing. Material is a wonderful thing. The science of the movement of material is, in many arenas, undisputed and the most effective and successful lens through which to view and manipulate objects. And it is a huge leap of faith to go from the success in the manipulation of objects to the denial of any consciousness that is bigger than us, the denial that our own consciousness is anything but an illusion of brain chemicals, the denial of existence beyond physicality, the denial of every human and spiritual urge to grow and exist, the denial to grow and exist in all the ways that have nothing to do with material science, just because science is the most effective lens for analyzing and understanding the movement of material objects. Wonderful. Dreams are an effective lens for analyzing and working with emotions. Diaries are effective tools. For every reality and dimension, we need to use the tools that our data, science is not at odds innately with everything that doesn't fit into a laboratory. Science doesn't even suggest innately that we should spend more money building laboratories than we spend on realities because nothing exists except what can be proved in laboratories. Science doesn't suggest that. Science says, hey, wait a minute. People have been doing perfectly well without laboratories to measure their dreams. Maybe we need to feed the hungry first, or help bring a healing of shame to this community before we think we're so important as laboratory operators that we should make everyone prove their emotional, mental existence in our box, or it doesn't exist. So science innately is a very generous lens through which to successfully explore matter. It's people, I think people sometimes, who are either too terrified of the uncertainty from childhood trauma, who are too angry at the idea of any God as a result of childhood abuse, and are too, I think anger and uncertainty are both, a resistance of uncertainty, a resistance of complexity is human because it's efficient, meaning we don't have to think and we can just say it's all material or it's all divine or whatever. It's simple. How nice. We don't have to think, we don't have to look, we don't have to gather data, we don't have to see what works. We just say it works here, so it works everywhere else, done. Isn't that great? Now we can go and watch TV. But actual paradigms and an analysis of what works in what areas and why validates a number of different tools and lenses. So that's the context. And what I've been struck by is I've done constellation therapy. I've done more than $100,000 in traditional therapies. I've done energy work. I've done thousands of pages of diary work. I've written 5,000 poems, all of an internal nature, of an expressive nature. I've done deep inner child work. I've done meditation. I've read books. I've worked with channels. I've worked with human beings. I've taken workshops. I've lived in communities. I've lived in conventional schools. I've gone to Waldorf schools. I've gone to conventional schools. And I've lived in different countries, in England and Scotland and Cyprus, in Canada, in the United States, and I've spent most of my time recently in Thailand, and then secondarily the Philippines. So what I'm interested in is, first of all, a phenomena that I've noticed, which is that almost everything gives some unique edge by doing it, thinking it, feeling it, looking at it in that way. 1. 2, that when choosing a modality to heal and grow and love and learn and become sane, when choosing a modality, that we can borrow a little bit of science. One of my lenses is efficiency, meaning how many units of energy do I have to invest in order to create a unit of well-being? Now, obviously, if you're investing 2 units of energy for every 1 unit of well-being, and particularly if it costs you 2 units of well-being to generate the 2 units of money, so let's take a typical Western conundrum that we've created for ourselves. So we do a job we don't like, and we have to work 6 miserable hours to get $100 in net profit to go to therapy. So 6 hours down buys 1 hour of therapy, or let's say it buys 2. So anyway, so 6 hours down, 2 units of therapy. Then we have to take the time and energy to do the therapy rather than watch TV and blah, blah, blah. Then the therapy brings back 2 units of well-being. Well, we're down -4, because what we're saying is if we hadn't done the therapy, we hadn't driven there, we hadn't spent the money, and we didn't work that day, we'd have been happier if we just stayed home that day and gone for a nice walk in nature. We'd have worked less, our body had been happier, blah, blah, blah. So that means that's not a good equation. Now we get into these little boxes where we have to work 40 hours a week and stuff, so we might as well do some therapy with some of that money, and you know that. But this is a good lens to look at. And what I'm looking at right now is the fact that this format of making 33-second or 33-minute and 25-second videos, which is the size of a lot of the videos I've been making, because that's the file size where the phone cuts off. And me, I'm using the reflective screen, so I'm watching every movement on my face, and I'm watching my eyes, and I'm listening to everything that I'm saying, and I'm having emotional responses to everything that I'm saying. And it is very useful. What do I mean by useful? What I mean is I've learned a considerable amount about the terrain and myself and other people by listening to what I'm saying. Now, how's that possible? Well, one of the things that happens in PTSD and trauma is we have partitions. And sometimes the body can access knowledge that the brain cannot think without accessing it through the body and then processing it and observing it. So when I speak, my body is speaking. I'm formulating an intention. My body is forming words. And my brain is watching and saying, oh, that's interesting. What do I think about that? I didn't know that, or I kind of knew that, but I just saw that new insight about that. So that's happening, number one. Number two, an incredible decompression is happening, because I don't expect, demand, or think anyone should watch all of my videos. I'm in the moment recording as much as 6 hours a day, because this is not my only focus and channel. I'm working with relationships, I'm working with philosophy, I'm working with ideas. I have a kind of a flow that I'm, so there's a variety of different stuff. And I'm integrating all that. I'm learning, speaking, integrating, and I am not meeting this continuous wall that I have met my entire life when it comes to talking to people. Because people have an attention span, they have a time span, and they have a tracking limitation. So the typical person needs to interrupt me within 5 minutes, or they're going to lose what they have to say. However, the way that my brain works, I lose a thread, meaning if there is an interruption, it is a different topic than if there isn't. So there's a tremendous gift to myself, and at times to the audience, to those watching, in not being interrupted. Because I'm not limiting and focusing to one person, because even if they don't interrupt me, if I notice that their eyes are glazing over and they don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I switch from flowing information through to them. It's again a completely different topic. This format is letting me flow information, and I happen to have a very high bandwidth for listening. To give you an example, I think my longest conversation with someone was about 8 hours. And I was so excited. It was just beautiful. And I could have gone more. And I can listen to someone and track them for 1-2 hours and, you know, create a mental geography, and then go back and explore that and really enjoy. And I can talk for that long easily as well. So it's balanced. And then this is breaking through the whole social taboo of monologues and all that. So the point is, this is an extraordinary outlet that I have discovered by chance and by necessity. Therapists are never around when I want to talk about something. And even if they are, it's kind of annoying to pay to educate a therapist, which is often what I do. You know, I'll think about something, maybe something they said, something they could do to improve, and they'll sit there taking notes, charging me $100 to $200 an hour. And it creates a conflict in me. So this has a lot more fluidity because I'm not paying for it, and so I don't have all the programmed associations with money. Because it's convenient, and I'm not, it's like, because that's the other outrage, it's like, you know, in my construction work where I might make $1,000 a day, to spend the afternoon orienting around a therapy appointment, that's cost me $500 in time off work, plus $200, so that's $700. And that's I mean, it's like, I'm just not doing that. Well, I mean, I did $100,000 worth of that. I'm not doing it. I'm not happy with the return on investment. So what this medium does is it lets me learn what's going on inside some of my brain that I need to know, because what comes out is relevant to me. Hopefully it's relevant to some people watching, at least some of them, and if not, please move on. But it's relevant to me, and it's somewhat relevant. I think it's relevant to the culture, but it's also very inconvenient because, you know, it's in a culture that's all about keeping busy. When do you find the time to learn about the dangers of being too busy to know what's going on? And so here's the setup, because that's kind of what started this thing, is I wanted to create a kind of a little bit of a sharing of how it can be important, why it's important, but also what are the dangers. So for example, I'm not censoring any of this. I'm not saying, gee, that's not going to play well with this segment of the population, I'm going to delete that. That doesn't sound cool, I'm going to delete that. How can I learn the truth of what's going on in me if I'm censoring? So I don't. So what that means is that there's going to be a percentage of people in almost any presentation, any video on any topic, that disagree, judge, don't get it, or don't like me. Maybe I remind them of the grandfather that raped them, or whatever it is. So there's personality likes and dislikes and judgments. There's style of communication likes and dislikes. So in other words, I'm making this for about 20% of people. About 20% of people, all that stuff will flow relatively well, and they will have the chance to extract information that is not available in 99.9% of locations of information. So you just don't find American men talking about this stuff in this way, for this reason, from this perspective. So it's unique information. I want it to be available for the percentage of people that can do something good with it. I like that. This makes me happy. I love being valuable, and what I really love is the intersection of creativity, of joy, of self-expression, of generosity, and being valued and appreciated and valuable. And I see that potential in this arena. Now, YouTube just happens to be, you know, what's around. The camera happens to be the recording device. It is what it is, but it's really valuable and useful to me. So what do? I start with an idea or a topic. Like this idea started with, wouldn't it be fun if there were 5 or 10 channels on the Understand Trauma site, and anyone who wanted to could just start a channel and we'd do a link to the channel so that people can see what's, you know, can learn about the terrain from different people, because I'm just one person and it's such a big terrain. So I thought that would be fun. 2, I thought, I wonder if there are people who would get the same value and benefit that I'm getting by making recordings. And 3, I thought, let's just share the little bits that I've learned, because there's been a little bit of a learning curve. So number 1, phones are great, but the microphone isn't ideal. Number 2, Samsung Galaxy Note 3, which is the 2 phones. I bought 2 of them so I could wear out batteries and stuff. So they're about $200 used on Amazon. This microphone is called Pop Voice, and it's a $13 microphone on Amazon. And it seems to be slightly better than the surround sound microphone, but not at all as good as I thought. I learned that when I watched one of my videos recently and I was using the microphone, and it's like, gosh, that didn't cancel out any of the noise, you know, but it still does, it's a little better. And it allows me to have more distance from the camera without shouting and feeling anything like that. So that's that. I say that because I bought several microphones and none of them would pick up as a microphone on the Samsung Note 3 phone. And I bought this. It was hard to find out what would. I just bought a bunch of them and this one works. So that's why I mention it. And so phones are sometimes wired differently, like where's the mic on your jack of your phone relative to a normal microphone. So that's just something to know. 2, I have a $12 tripod, again from Amazon. You just look at camera tripods, there'll be some that are around $12, and I use that to set it up on tables or chairs or, you know, various things. 3, this phone just cuts off at 33 minutes and 25 seconds, so that's the recording size. I start a topic. I try and minimize background distractions. I give up on trying to be perfect on that, because otherwise I'm going to feel like a martyr stressing over all this stuff, which it just doesn't matter. You know, like there's the towels back there, there's a bit of a suitcase. The light often isn't ideal. It just doesn't matter that much for the purpose of your really seeing and being present to what's going on. It's nice for your audience, but I'm kind of digging my way out of a crisis. I feel like I'm trying to get out of this pit and, you know, talking my way out of it to kind of see what's going on with the fact that I'm exhausted with all that and taking a rest. So that's kind of my balance. And then you can create a YouTube channel and just upload it to that channel, and you can watch videos on YouTube about how to do all this stuff. Like, how do you create a YouTube channel? Well, there will be a video on that. And then I disable comments because I've heard enough stories about hate flaming. And this is pretty vulnerable stuff. As I say, I'm not censoring it at all. So, and that's the whole point. I don't want to pretend to be cool, and I don't want to be sociopathic. So I'm going to be hurt if anyone's clearly trying to hurt me. And I'm going to be happy when someone's clearly trying to be supportive. It's that simple. I'm a human feeling man. And so what I do is I've asked my assistant, and you can read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, which changed my life some years back by educating me to the reality of virtual assistant. I have an amazing virtual assistant, so I'm sensitive to Wi-Fi and 3G. So what I do is I try and find hotels with a LAN Ethernet cable, 1. 2, I record. I have like a 60 gigabyte micro SD card in the phone. I record, I transfer it to the computer hard drive, then I send it over to Dropbox. Then I send the folders over to my virtual assistant. He adds little intros and stuff like that and sticks them up on the channels. And that makes it easy enough that it doesn't feel like this huge burden to do it. And the other thing is you can do this method and not publish them. You know, you can just record and talk as if you're talking to others, because that's the other bit that really works for me. If I'm talking to an individual person, I generally know that person or that group enough to know their frame for viewing what I'm saying. So for example, if I talk to my sweetie, I know it's getting over her head after, about 5 minutes, and it's just not that interesting to her. She'd rather play chess or do something fun. So I'm going to immediately start arguing with myself, like, don't keep talking. She doesn't want to hear this. So now I've got a divided voice. But in the camera format, the camera, of course, gives me zero resistance. And who I'm talking to are, like, I'm imagining, people that are in heavy trauma and PTSD. They're not looking for shortcuts. They're looking to get the nuanced details of what's going on because it's ruining their life. So they're not trying to get the cliff notes. They're trying to really get their hand on this. So I don't imagine many of them are that impatient. 2, therapists and parents and stuff that want and need to learn about this, or partners that are having a really hard time with other partners with PTSD. So I'm talking with them, the people that are really motivated and interested. And then the others, of course, can delete, move on, skip forward, say I've got it, and go on. There's our video length.